Hola a todo el mundo y bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Sirey. Soy una abogada afro-latina licenciada practicando la ley criminal, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a hablar del caso de Colin Gray. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen, I have done a number of series videos on this channel. And what I mean by that is I've done a number of videos where we've talked about the specific case in different videos, right? And I want to break up the monotony of that. I'm still covering the Corey Richins case, so don't you guys worry. Specifically, Mary, my heartbeat, don't you worry, okay? But I want to add a little sprinkle and a little razzle and a little dazzle and add some additional cases for those who might not be as interested in just Corey. This is the purpose of this video. I remember I told you guys when we were talking about the case of Richard Ferguson that there was another case that I wanted to talk to you guys about, specifically about a father being charged for a school shooting committed by his son. And I wanted to make differentiations between the Richard Ferguson case and this one. And this is the case that I wanted to share with you guys. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. This is the case of Colin Gray. Before we talk about the specific facts of this case, I will just let you know that this trial was actually televised, and a lot of the facts that I'm going to reiterate to you, I gathered from the prosecutor's opening statements. So basically what the prosecutor thought that the evidence would show. In that, I will tell you just briefly my opinions of the prosecution's opening before we get into the facts of the case. Generally speaking, I thought the prosecutor did a phenomenal job in trying to reiterate and tell you guys the story of what happened here. I will say that the prosecution lost me just a smidge because in a lot of the facts that the prosecution said during opening, it was giving a timeline, but it would jump around in the timeline, or at least that's how I viewed it. Right? So it'd be like, on this date, this happened. Wait, let's go back a month ago. Wait, now let's fast forward another month. And it was just kind of confusing. But overall, I thought the prosecution did a phenomenal job with this opening statement. In reviewing and listening to the opening statement, I will tell you that I was really saddened by the facts of this case. Although we talk about all the time how opening statements are not evidence, they're just argument, I think that the prosecutor did a hell of a job. He did a phenomenal job in this opening statement. But let's go ahead and get started about Colin Gray. The first thing that I noted that the prosecution said in this case is that this is not a case about holding parents accountable for what their children do. Instead, the prosecution differentiated by stating that this was a case about holding parents accountable for giving their children access to firearms after being advised and told on many separate occasions that the child intended to harm others. So let's go back just in time a smidge. On September 4th of 2024, it's the Wednesday right after Labor Day, and a 14-year-old boy who is Colt Gray, Colin Gray's son, enters Appalachia High School. So it's my understanding that Appalachia High School was a completely new school for Colt. It's also my understanding that Colt was completely out of school for the entire year prior. Despite it already being 1 month into the school year, this was only Colt's 5th day of attending school. What should be of note and what is of most concern is the fact that Colt was carrying an AR rifle in his backpack when he entered the school. So this is a really interesting exchange. Colt enters into his first period computer science class. He places the backpack with the AR rifle directly in front of him. At some point, he goes up to his teacher and he asks his teacher if they had been informed or warned or what have you about any active shooters or what to do in the case of an active shooter. The teacher responds to Colt, but of course that question is rather concerning. So after the response to Colt, the teacher emails the guidance counselor to inform the guidance counselor of Colt's rather diabolical and demented question. So nothing happens after the teacher emails the guidance counselor, and instead, Colt heads to his second period class. While Colt is at his second period class, the first period teacher for computer science stews on his question just a bit more and decides she needs to take immediate action. At that point, while Colt is headed to his second period class or already in it, his first period teacher heads to the office to speak to the vice principal. As Colt enters his second period classroom, he places the backpack down and he tells his teacher that he's going to go to the counselor's office. Instead, Colt heads to the boys' bathroom where he remains for the next 26 minutes. Now let's go back. And remember, I'm just going to be jumping around in timeline here because I want to give you the story directly as it was stated in the prosecution's opening statement. So 4 minutes before Colt leaves his second period classroom to go to the bathroom, his mother calls the school's guidance counselor to advise that Colt had sent some rather concerning text messages and he's no longer responding to her requests for a response. I will note, though, what was really interesting to me was that Colt's mother was actually located in Fitzgerald, Georgia, which was about 4 hours from where Colt was currently situated. So despite Colt not being really well known in the school because he had only been there for 5 days, despite school commencing a month ago, this counselor actually knew who Colt was because the counselor had met with Colt, I believe, the week prior. During the conversation that Colt's mother had with the counselor, they were exchanging their thoughts and their opinions about Colt's emotional and mental well-being. But you know what's really interesting? Prosecution stated at the end of the call, so the very last moments right before the call was going to end, Colt's mother advised that Colt did have access to firearms. Now I'm going to pause 3 seconds to just give you guys my opinion on that. I find it disconcerting and irresponsible for a parent to not only let their child have access to firearms, but in addition to letting their child have access to firearms, know that your child is making rather concerning text messages, statements, what have you, enough so that you call the school to warn them, and then not let that statement be the first one that exits your mouth when you're talking to the counselor. That was really interesting to me, but let's carry on in what happened next. After that conversation, the counselor hangs up and then heads to talk to the vice principal. 7 minutes after the call ends, and after the counselor advises the vice principal and another school official try to track Colt down by heading to his second period classroom. So here's where a little bit of confusion ensues. Those two officials see another boy who has a name almost identical to Colt's. They assume that they're searching for the other boy, and they search that other boy's backpack, obviously to no avail. That other boy had legitimately gone to the restroom, and, they realized it was a dead end. So here's where things get a little bit confusing. Some emails were exchanged amongst the officials, and they're trying to track Colt down. And in that time, this is what happens. Colt exits the restroom wearing yellow work gloves, carrying the rifle with a poster board to conceal it, and heads back towards his second period classroom. What happens to be serendipity, let's call it, is that when the vice principal and the other school official left that second period classroom, they locked the door behind them, so Colt was unable to get inside. Unfortunately, that didn't derail Colt's plans at all. So instead, he goes to the classroom right next to his second period classroom, and he opens fire. The following people were inside that classroom:
Landon Adams, Christian Angulo, Jackson Beaver, Hayden Bowen, Jalene Brady, Michaela Brown, William Carricker, Marquez Coleman, Melanie Delira Castaneda, Natalie Griffith, Taylor Jones, Kendez Lawrence, Martin Moreno Galdamez, Tyler Moon, Ariana Norman, Brittany Rubio, Mason Skirmerhorn, Ronaldo Vega, and Nautica Walton.
After opening fire, Colt decides that it's a great idea to continue looking for more victims, and so he does. At one point, he shoots one of the teachers in the neck, and she dies. That teacher was 53-year-old Christina Ermy. In addition to Christina, 39-year-old math teacher and assistant football coach Richard Aspinwall passed. 14-year-old student Mason Schermerhorn passes. And 14-year-old student Christian Angulo passes. Another teacher by the name of David Phoenix was injured in the attack, as well as 8 other students. Now, what did I say originally? As the prosecution stated, this was not a case of charging the father for actions of his son, but instead, it is a case of allowing a child access to guns after being warned on several separate occasions that the child would harm someone. On September 19th of 2021, precisely 3 years preceding this shooting, Colt made some rather interesting searches. He searched the term abuse, and he also searched how to kill your dad. After those searches, school resource officers went to Colt's home to make sure that everything was okay. Colin tells the school resource officers that everything is fine, but to further alleviate some of their concerns, they open a DIFUS, or Division of Family Services case, and a caseworker starts checking on the family monthly. The prosecution said that the family moved 6 weeks later, but the kids aren't enrolled into school until February of 2022, which is 5 months after this incident. What is also really interesting to me is the fact that the prosecution made note that approximately 1 year after the How to Kill Your Dad search, Colt is enrolled in his 7th school in the last 4 years. After that, Colt stays with his father as his siblings move away. It's my understanding that at that point, the siblings move with their mother. Despite the separation of the siblings, caseworkers are still checking on the entirety of the family. So Colt and Colin's home, and then the mother with the other siblings. During these monthly visits, it is said that Colin would tell the caseworker that Colt was doing fine and everything was splendid and everything was going swimmingly. But they learned that that was not the case. On Sunday, May 21st of 2023, which is the end of Colt's 7th grade year, the police receive a tip from the FBI that Colt was threatening on an app or a program or something called Discord to shoot up an elementary school, and he said that he was going to execute the shooting within the next 2 years. The FBI passes the tip to local authorities. Local authorities discover that the IP address is registered to Colt, and they go to the home to check what on earth is going on. Now, remember what I said that the prosecution said. The family had moved 6 weeks prior, so they go to the first address that they had on file and discover that no one's living there. But in that first address is a new family who still receives mail from the preceding family, something like that, and they're able to figure out where Colt and Colin live now. When they go and have the conversation with Colt and Colin, the police directly ask Colin if Colt has any access to guns, and Colin's response is something to the fact of, "We take school shootings very seriously." After that, Colt ultimately denies that it was he that made the threats to shoot up an elementary school, and he essentially said that his Discord got hacked. The police, I guess, believed them. And so they kind of closed that investigation about the threat, but they strongly advise Colin to limit Colt's access to any firearms. So the caseworker that was checking on the family, caseworker goes to the home less than a month after the police go out to check up on this threat that was made on Discord. But does Colin tell the caseworker that the police were there? Absolutely not. 2 weeks after the caseworker's visit, Colin signs a new lease and he moves. But does he tell the caseworker that he has moved? Of course not. 2 months later, they enroll Colt into a different school, but he never has the opportunity to attend, as he's withdrawn merely 8 days after the enrollment. Okay, so what happens next? It's my understanding that Colt then goes to live with his mother, but his mother has serious concerns because she notes that Colt is still angry, he's still violent, he's having outbursts, and she's just really, 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 really scared. How his violence manifested itself was that Colt was breaking windows, he was cutting things with a knife, and he also started cutting himself. A few weeks after that, Colt moves back in with Colin, but he still doesn't attend school. 2 weeks after that, because remember, the caseworkers are still going to the separate homes. Mom tests positive for drugs and she fears she's going to lose the kids. So the kids that were in her custody then move with Colin and Colt. As the caseworker is checking on all the children, the caseworker informs Colin that he needs to get the children into school and counseling, but he does neither. 3 weeks after that, it's my understanding that Colt's mom just goes haywire. There's an incident by which she duct tapes her own mother to a chair. She ultimately ends up getting arrested as a result of that. After her arrest, she does some time in an inpatient drug facility. So after everything that I just mentioned to you, Colt's violence, the outbursts, the school shooting threats, the everything, the how to kill your dad search, the everything, the warnings from the officials to not let Colt have access to a firearm, what does Colin do? He thought it would be a phenomenal Christmas present to gift his son a rifle. As if that wasn't bad enough, Colin also allows Colt to keep the rifle inside of his bedroom. 2 months after that, Colt's siblings start attending school, but Colt does not. Instead, his father, Colin, decides to buy him more accessories for that rifle. Those accessories include a bungee sling, accessory rail set, 45-degree offset iron sight, and ammunition. After purchasing this rifle and after purchasing all these wonderful accessories for his son, what happens next? To no one's surprise, I guess maybe except for Colin, Colt starts spiraling. Colt starts physically fighting his father and putting holes in the walls of their home. But is that rifle ever removed from his room? Absolutely not. It's even said that Colt's mental health got so bad that they start giving him his mother's prescription for Zoloft because they think that Colt is depressed. But even that doesn't help. And then after that, do you know what Colt does? He hangs up posters of Nicholas Cruz inside of his bedroom. For those of you guys who are unaware, Nicholas Cruz is the Parkland school shooter. Do you think that Colin took it upon himself to take the rifle out of Colt's room at that point? Of course not. 3 weeks before the shooting, Colt starts attending Appalachia High School. He had not been in school for approximately 15 months. That morning, Colt sends his dad a text message at 6:49 a.m. that reads, "I'm sick of your shit. This is the fucking end for you. You fucking caused this." Then another 2 minutes later, he sends another message that reads, "Whenever something happens, just know the blood is on your hands." So after this, after the Nicholas Cruz posters, after these text messages saying this is the fucking end and whatever happens, blood is on your hands, do you think that Colin removed the rifle from his son's bedroom? Of course not. The very next day after those rather concerning text messages, Colt skips school and he has a physical altercation with his mother, who at that point tries to remove the rifle from him. That didn't happen though. Colt grabs the rifle and then shoves his mother to the ground. So then mom decides that Father Colin needs to step in. She says to him, "You need to take that rifle away from Colt and lock it up." Colin agrees, but does he ever do it? Not at all. So after the physical altercation with his mother, Colt asks Colin for 150 rounds of ammunition. And how does Colin respond? "You can have it. I just need to pay for everything, but I'll get it for you. Sure, son." So after all of this, mom decides it's important for Colt to go to an inpatient program. And Colin seemingly agrees. But is he ever enrolled? You guessed it. Absolutely not. Colt then sends a rather concerning message to his grandmother, asking, "If I did something terrible, would you still love me?" Grandma is so concerned. She calls an inpatient program and asks about enrolling Colt. She is advised that a parent must do the enrollment Because Colt is living with Colin, she informs Colin. Colin agrees to do the enrollment, but yet again, does he do it? No. 2 days later, Colin tells his father there are voices inside of his head telling him what to do. Do you think that was the trigger to get him enrolled into some sort of program? Not at all. And it was an amalgamation of all of these things that bring us to Colt's actions and the shooting that happened. So at the trial, there were a few people that testified whose testimony I want to discuss with you. I want to talk specifically about Colt's sister and Colin's daughter, who testified that she is now living in a foster home and her foster parents make her much happier, to the extent that she could say that. But she also said that when the authorities were looking into the family, Colin advised her to lie.
How did you end up getting home that day on September 4th?
I took the bus home.
Okay. When you got home, was there a lot of law enforcement there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was that pretty rough to come home to?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the next day, so September 5th, going up to the tree house to get what was called a forensic interview?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have you ever gone back and watched that interview, reviewed the recording of it or anything to... Okay. So,
No, ma'am.
so on that day, September 5th, who drove you to the treehouse to get that interview?
My father.
Okay. Was he the only one in the car with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you're on your way in to get that interview, did Colin tell you anything about how you should answer those questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what he told you.
So he told me, like, if they asked me anything, about if he knew that Colt had problems and that his problems would lead up to this, that I should basically try to cover for him. And specifically about the pictures on the walls, he told me not to tell them that he knew what they were.
Okay. And when you say pictures on the wall, do you mean the pictures of Nicholas Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the news articles about Nicholas Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so he told you to tell them that Colin, didn't know who that was.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that contrary to what you had actual knowledge of?
Yes.
I guess, would that not be truthful?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In addition to his daughter's testimony, Colin himself decided to take the stand. But instead of talking about his testimony in this video, I want to further analyze it in a separate video because I think it'd be important to just piece it apart. At the conclusion of the trial, Colin was found guilty of all charges.
In the Superior Court of Barrow County, State of Georgia versus Colin Gray, case number 24-CR-593-P, jury verdict. Count 1, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 2, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 3, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 4, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 5, involuntary manslaughter, unfaithful act. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 6, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 7, involuntary manslaughter, unlawful act. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 8, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 10, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 11, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 12, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 13, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 14, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 15, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 16, cruelty to children in the second degree. we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 17, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 18, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 19, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 20, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 22, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 23, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 24, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 25, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 26, cruelty to children in the second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 27, reckless conduct, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 28, reckless conduct, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 29, reckless conduct, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. This third day of March 2026, signed foreperson.
Now let's compare that to the Richard Ferguson case, because I know I told you guys that I wanted to do a comparison. These are just my opinions. You are more than welcome to disagree with me, but this is how I feel. To me, there is a sharp difference in handing your son the keys to a vehicle, knowing that he does not have a license, a permit, or otherwise to be operating the vehicle, and him accidentally causing an accident that killed many people, and you ultimately being charged for it, or in connection with it, let's say, than what happened here. Here, to me, seems intentional. Colin was advised on numerous occasions that his son was a menace, that this boy was going to harm people, harm himself, and he should not have access to guns. Despite the numerous warnings he was given, Colin decided not only to provide the gun, but to also provide the ammunition, separate accessories, buy another 150 rounds. Colin could care less. And it was his intentionality and his actions that ultimately ended the lives of all the people involved here. We can disagree. I understand that people have said to me, as far as the Richard Ferguson case, well, Desiree, his actions led to the death of these separate peoples. And I'm not disagreeing. What I'm disagreeing on is the intentionality. I do not believe that Richard Ferguson handed his son the keys to a vehicle, knowing that his son was unlicensed, knowing that his son would also cause an accident that would claim the lives of multiple victims. That was not the intent. He just wanted his son to go somewhere and then come back. And again, we can disagree. Here, it was intentional. I believe the prosecution made the proper decision in charging him, and I believe the jury made a phenomenal decision in convicting him. This, to me, was just completely 1000% on Colin. But that is it for this video. Let me know what you guys need to let me know down below. But let me tell you guys this, okay? I don't ask you guys for much, but I'm going to ask today. If you think that you are subscribed to my channel, can you please just check again? I've heard situations and instances of YouTube unsubscribing people, and that's why people aren't getting notifications for channels. So go ahead and check again for me. And also, if you are new to this video and you liked this video, you want to be more informed on these videos, you want to hear me talk at you for multiple other videos, please do me the favor of subscribing. To my subscribers who are already subscribed, I need more than just a thumbs up on videos. If you like it, do me the favor of also commenting, liking and commenting, because that'll push me further into the algorithm for whoever else needs to see it. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.